Hello, welcome back to the Lazy K Farmstead. It's a nice morning outside. Breeze is blowing a little bit. And I've been working on planning where I'm going to put all my different things in my garden this year. We're about 2 weeks away from our last expected frost date. We're in zone 7B here in East Texas. And I've got a greenhouse and a grow house full of plants that are anxious to get started. So, but where are we going to put them? And I was thinking about that. I'm thinking I need to be planning wisely. Companion planting is where you take plants that are good for each other, beneficial to each other, and you plant them close to one another. There are also plants where you want to keep them separate. They help disease spread to one another very easily, and so those, of course, are ones that you want to keep apart. So I've put together a small list of ones that I want to talk about just for a little while this morning. The Farmer's Almanac has an excellent article on 10 different plants for the garden and what to plant close to them, what to plant away from them, kind of a friend and foe scenario. So I want to go through four of them that are important to me and that I'm going to start with. Some of the other plants that are on the list I am going to plant, but these are four that I'm going to focus on and make sure that I get it right in hopes of getting the best harvest possible. So the concept of companion planting is definitely not something that I've come up with. In fact, the USDA says that the Iroquois and Cherokee Native Americans have been doing companion planting for many, many years. And this is what they called a Three Sisters garden. Many of you may be familiar with the Three Sisters garden. I've heard about it for years and I've looked into it, and it seems like a really good idea. So the Three Sisters are comprised of corn, beans, and squash. Now the corn, of course, grows tall. The beans can climb the stalks, and the squash help protect the ground, helping keep out the weeds, helping keep moisture in the soil. And so the Three Sisters garden is based on that principle and something that I may try to do. We are planning to plant a corn. Butter gold is the corn we're going to plant. Some Blue Lake beans. Now those, I think, are a bush bean. You may have to find us a pole bean. And then squash. I've got lots and lots of squash. Yellow squash, zucchini squash, patty pan squash, spaghetti squash, all kinds of squash. So, Three Sisters garden, give it some thought. Now also, when you're thinking about companion planting, you want to be aware of plants that might, if they're too close together, they could contribute to blight. And blight is caused by a fungus and spores. Now these spores can be blown around by the wind. They can be carried from plant to plant by insects, or it can be in the water. If you're watering and the water happens to pass over a plant with blight, it could run down to another one. So keeping that in mind, that some of the plants that you have out there are more prone to blight, you can kind of mitigate some of that before it even happens. Nematodes are another thing you'll hear talked about in the garden. And nematodes are small worms, some kind of insect. I am no expert on nematodes, I'll tell you. But I can tell you what I have learned is that they can be very destructive, especially to the roots, I think, of plants. So more research is necessary on my part before I can talk more about nematodes. But just being aware that those kinds of things can happen in the garden will get you a long way into helping prevent them. All right, so let's get into the four that I specifically want to talk about today. Okay, so let's start with tomatoes, since tomatoes are one of my favorite things to grow and favorite things to harvest and favorite things to eat. So this information that I'm going to share with you is something I got off that Farmer's Almanac website. And first up is basil. Of course, tomatoes and basil seem like a natural combination. You eat them together, they should plant together. And they are in fact listed as some of the best companion plants. Basil, as I understand, helps repel flies and mosquitoes too. Marigolds. I've always heard plant marigolds in your garden. Marigolds, I'm growing quite a few marigolds. I'm going to direct seed marigolds, but marigolds help attract the pollinators. They also help repel some of those nematodes and the other insects that can be detrimental to your garden. So marigolds, marigolds, marigolds. Now, more importantly, maybe, is some of the foe to keep away from your tomatoes. Those would be cabbages, beets, peas, fennel, dill, and rosemary. So remember, you got friends and you got foes. Keep your friends close. Okay, on to the next. Peppers, another of my favorites to grow. I have a big focus on peppers this year. I've had a magnificent sprouting of my cubanelles, so I'm really looking forward to peppers. So some of the friends that I'm going to plant around peppers would be basil, onions, spinach, and tomatoes. Easy enough. I have all those already. Foes for peppers include beans. Pepper plants do not like beans. As I understand it, they don't like to be restricted. They like to be able to do their own thing. So keep the beans away from the peppers. Okay, what's next? Cucumbers. Cucumbers are almost a must-have in any garden, just like tomatoes and peppers, whether they're for fresh eating or whether they're for making pickles. Cucumbers are going to be a big part of my garden this year because I did not make pickles at all last year. So this year, I need a cucumber harvest. So some of the friends I'm going to plant with my cucumbers are going to be marigolds again. Marigolds love their cucumbers apparently too. Nasturtiums. I'm going to grow some nasturtiums. Both of these help repel aphids. Aphids are little tiny bugs that you'll find on the back of the leaves, and they can really do some damage and really cover your plants before you turn around. Now, there are some organic ways that you can help control the aphids, but if you can prevent them altogether, all the better. Now, other things that are going to be friends to your cucumbers include beans, celery, corn, lettuce, dill, peas, and radishes. Very common things. Most everybody grows in their garden. Should be easy enough to put a few of those in with our cucumbers. So aromatic herbs such as sage, I understand, will stunt your cucumbers, and we certainly don't want that. So keep all those aromatic herbs, their own little part of the garden. And the fourth one, squash. I love some squash. I have recently acquired a real taste for patty pan squash. Last year, one of my granddaughters and I went to our local farmer's market here in town, and I bought some beautiful scalloped patty pan squash. Love them. Cook them just like I do regular yellow summer squash. I'm telling you, they're my new favorite. So very mild taste. Cook very well, very similarly to the yellow squash. And so definitely my favorite. And I've got some good starts out in the greenhouse for patty pan squash. But for your squash in general, like I say, I'm doing many varieties of squash this year. Their friends are going to be corn, beans, peas, radishes, dill, and again, our old friend, the marigold. It's almost as if I need to plant as much marigold as I do everything else combined. But the foe that I've learned to squash is potatoes. Keep your squash away from your potatoes. Apparently, both are prone to blight. Late in the season, you'll see that you're getting a white powdery mildew on your squash, and that can easily spread to other things, apparently potatoes. So these are some things I knew, some things I've learned, but some things I wanted to share with you today. So hope you'll keep these in mind when you're planning your garden and then planting your garden this year. And if you've got other things that would be useful to me in planning or planting my garden, then let me know. Drop me a line in the comments below. I'm always willing to learn new things. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Hope you have a great day.